Hey, 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 and happy Tuesday. Terry here, and I'm in the studio. It's right now when I'm recording this, it's 9:45. Hard to believe it's only 9:45. I feel like I've had an entire day already. But Tuesday's my studio day, so I'm here in the studio because there's no one else here. I don't have to wear my mask, which is amazing. And so I'm continuing on in the work I started last week and the week before. So over there, maybe I'll show you. I have my parts of my teapots drying. I also have these beautiful bowls, which were a custom order, that are fired and ready to go. So I'm pretty darn excited about that. So she's going to pick out 4, and then after that, the other 2 will be up for grabs. What else? Really excited because I'm working on the pro coaching program that Andre and I are developing around relationships. But I'm still available for one-on-one coaching for now. So if there's something that you wish to talk about, I'm here for you. But I'm taking a great course right now, which is why I don't have a ton of time. I only have about an hour more here in the studio, so I probably won't get to the teapots. But I have some pieces to decorate from last week, and I thought I had a small piece of clay I thought I would make something with this week, so then I can keep kind of moving things along. Because, announcement, I am doing the West Hamilton Artists Tour again. So if anybody's familiar with that, you'll know that it's a studio tour in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And how the format used to be is you could go from place to place, people would walk around, visit the studios, there'd be multiple artists in each location. Last year, they had to go online because of COVID, and this year we're doing something a little bit different, and we're hoping that by May we can do some sort of in-person event. And so one of our organizers, Paul Ilya, has a great studio in East Hamilton, and so we're going to do some hopefully social distance, like more of a gallery show this year. So we have 13 artists participating. I'm one of the artists, so of course I have to work on some work to have it there. So I still want to make some bigger pieces, and I think that's why I made the teapots last week. Maybe if they work out, I'll do some sort of tea sets or something that are really interesting, because I'll only have a really small space at the gallery because, you know, it's only so big and there's 13 of us. But I do love making little serving dishes, and like I said, I have this piece of clay that I had already rolled out last week, so I want to finish working with that. So hopefully you can see that. Oh no, low power already. My phone was just plugged in. Okay, so I rolled this piece of clay out on the slab roller, which is behind me. And I always roll it a little thicker than I need it because I want to do some extra prep with it after that. Because also you get marks on it. You probably can't see, there's still some there, from the canvas that you roll it through, and I don't want those marks on my pots. So what I do is I have this great roller, silicone roller, and I'll roll the clay a bit out, and then I'll do a bit of prepping, and this is what I call making the clay happy. So I have this great red rib, which is from Mud Tools, and I'm basically, if it's too dry, I will use a really squeezed out sponge and sponge it down, and then I'm just basically compressing and smoothing out the clay. Sometimes as well, when you roll it through the roller, you get gouges in it. So this one in particular had a big gouge in it, so I wanted to make sure I repaired that. And this just gets the clay, like what I said, happy. So it's not a huge piece of clay, but I'm trying to see, I want to use the most of it that I can, because it was quite a dry piece of clay, and I'm not going to be able to do a lot with it after that. Usually if it's really wet, you can ball it back up and that sort of thing, and I can do that. I don't want to waste the clay, but sometimes it's just not worth it. Okay, so what I use is I have various shapes and sizes of these wood GR pottery forms. So I bought these at a Pottery Supply House in Oakville. I've gotten several of them at clay conferences, and I started with a few, but I've gotten a lot because I really love the opportunity of the shapes that you can provide. So I will show you how I use them. I have this small one. This is like the smallest one I have. I love to make these little dishes out of these. I have a round one. I have several rectangular ones. And these are what I use to make what I call my fancy dishes. There's a square one, another square one, and then an even bigger square one. So I probably, with this clay, I might be able to make this big one, which I haven't made in a while, and then I can pair it as a set with a small one or two, or even 4. Actually, probably 4 would fit in nicely. So that's kind of an idea of something that could be an all-in-one set. And then I have this spacer. So I'll show you. So I've got, these ones are already made. So this one I used the long rectangular one, and you can see that there's a pattern pressed into it. So this is still waiting for its decoration, which I'm gonna do as well. Let's see, how's this clay? I think this clay is pretty good. Now, it's about the width I want, a little less than 1/4 of an inch thick. Am I going to fit this in? Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna go for it because that will use the majority of the clay. And yeah, usually what I do is I have paper patterns so I know exactly how much clay for each one. I don't think I have one for this one, so it's going to be a bit of a guess. So bear with me on that. But before I cut it out, I have to give it some texture. So I have several. These are made also, are these made by GR Pottery Tools? I'm not sure, or someone else. I have several purchased textured rollers, and then I also have my own ones that I've made myself. Of course, I'm not going to be able to find any right now since I'm on camera. There's probably one in here. And I really like these. I like to give oh yeah, here's some. So here's one that I've made out of bisque clay, and you can just roll it in to give it a bit of texture. Because I like having both a bit of texture and then a bit of surface design. And you can see that, here's one of the pieces I made. So these will all have kind of this tattoo design on them where they're done. And even this one, no, not this one, but you can see like I've altered the rim. So it gives you a little bit more to look at. So it's not just a straight bowl, it's got, you know, more to it. Sometimes I'll just put a dot in it. This one, for example, I don't know if you can see, there's some little indents in them just to give some surface tension. So that's kind of what I'm going for. But there's a specific one I want, of course, and I cannot put my hands on it. Well, let's go with an oldie but a goodie. So this is one of my favorite ones. I made this when I was working in Red Deer, Alberta, and it actually broke, I don't know if you can see, and I glued it together because it was a nice long one. So I'm gonna actually use that one. And basically all you do is you wanna roll it into the clay so it leaves an impression. Because this one broke and there's some gaps, you can see when you roll it, there's a few little gaps in it, but you know what? It's fine. I kind of like that because if I want to, I can put patterns and stuff in there. Okay, so this is the shape. So I'm gonna try to maximize this piece of clay. So basically, I'm gonna use all of it. I need a knife. Because if you think about it, there's about what, an inch of space there. So I'm gonna cut about that much, maybe slightly less all the way around. Like I said, if I was doing this as I normally would, I would have already made a pattern for it, but I'm trying to use all the clay possible. And then I'm going to even off the top here. So I have generally a square. And then I'm going to cover up that clay because I want to use that again. Didn't quite get it right here. Okay. So let's hope that's generally big enough. Okay, and I'm going to put that aside over there, off camera. All right, so I've got my square. So, I mean, I could start working with it like this, but the problem is, while clay is soft in its wet form, it is not soft in its fired form. So I don't want those really sharp edges. So what I do is, I learned this trick from another potter, is I get a piece of plastic. A single layer is best, but this will do. And you lay it over the clay, and then you get a damp sponge, and you're gonna have to do this on both sides, which I'll do, and you basically compress and press down on that edge. It sort of like rounds it. So what it does is, it rounds it without adding extra water. Now because this clay is pretty dry, I will probably still go back down and do that, add a bit of moisture before I form it. So there's one side, so you probably can't see that on here. And then I'll flip it over, and I'll do it on this side. So what else did I want to tell you? Not much. I do have a YouTube channel, and probably what I'll start doing is making sure if I have these lives that I'll also post them on my YouTube channel, which is kind of a mix of like pottery videos and healthy food. When I get home, I'll post a link to my YouTube channel on here, but I've got some great smoothie recipes on there and other recipes. Smoothies are kind of my favorite thing. It's something I have every day, and I recently figured out a hack of how to make a couple of the good food smoothies. So I have one more video I should post today, but I recorded it last week, which I'll do if I have time today, or I'll post it tomorrow. It doesn't really matter. Anyways, what was great about it is I prep these smoothies, and usually I make smoothies like as I need them, but I wanted to try prepping them and see what difference it made. And honestly, this morning when I was trying to get to the studio, because I know I have limited time today, it was like amazing because I just basically threw it in the blender, added my almond milk. I didn't like it. It shaves off several minutes, and it just makes it enough convenient that you're more likely to go for a smoothie in the morning than something else. And it's nice to have them prepped. So it was the banana pecan one, in case anyone is concerned. Okay. Oh no, this piece of sponge is too small. Is there another piece here? Well, I guess normally I don't make this such a big piece, but basically what I'm doing is I'm laying the clay on top of the sponge. I think it'll still work. And then I'm gonna put the form on it and try to center it. Yeah, this is definitely enough clay. Might be too much clay. So then I'm gonna press down. Now it's not ideal because this one is not going to form on the sides where there's no sponge, but it's okay. We'll get the general idea. And then you want to flip it onto a board, and then you can continue working with it. So I'm going to take this sponge and flip it over. So there we go. All right. So this is a little low, so I'm going to take one of the other forms so I can elevate this so that because the clay is sort of hanging over the edge. Okay, and then I'm going to get my banding wheel, and I'm going to put it on top of the banding wheel so I can keep working on it. Hopefully that isn't too high for you. Maybe I need to step back a bit. I know I should probably do this in sideways, but it's just easier to do this way. And I don't want to change it now. Okay, so there. So now it's, the form is there. You can see the general shape if I turn it around, but it's not quite formed to that rectangle shape. So I'm going to take my sponge and I'm basically going to gently ease it down further onto the form. Not that I want it to stick to the form, but I want it to get more of that rectangular shape. Now I don't want to add too much water. That's too much water. The corners are tricky. You kind of have to go right down in the corner. So you can see that's got a little bit, it's formed a little bit more to the shape, because whatever food you put in here, you don't want it to slide off, obviously. And then what I can do just to make sure it's nice and smooth is I can use this nice red rib and again, press down. And this will also help define where the edge is, because this is not going to be a flat bottom dish. This is a fancy dish. Fancy dishes aren't flat. So I'm going to add a foot to it. If anyone has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I think I can see them. All right. So now we've got this generally on the mold. The mold is just to give it that rectangular shape. And now I can also tell where the edge is, because that's important. So I'm going to go back and see if I can reuse this clay. So I have the extra clay that I didn't use, and I want to make this into the foot, because the foot I'm going to make with a coil. Don't think this is going to be enough, so I'm going to try adding more. So I need some room. Some room off screen. I'm going to put this aside. Okay, so I've got this clay. It's pretty dry, as you can see. So what I'm going to do to kind of give it a bit more life, or hopefully give it some more life, because I don't want to use new clay. I have this one here. I won't be using it for anything else, is I'm going to try rolling it. And basically I'm going to start by getting it into a coil shape. I made the mistake of wetting this end. This end got a bit wet, but that's okay. This is quite a big piece, so I might have to do the coil in 2 pieces. But basically I want to start rolling it. And the reason, I don't know if you can see, but I wet the board a little bit. So I'm going to roll from wet to dry, and that will start bringing this coil together. And I can see it separating there, because, and if it's, another thing you can do if it's getting square is, I learned this from somebody, from a potter, is twist it. If it starts getting, if you feel like you're going chunk, 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 chunk as you're rolling, and it's squaring off and not getting round, that's a good trick to do, is to just kind of twist it on itself. So my fingers are spread like this. I'm not giving too much pressure, kind of working my way along the coil. I can tell this end is not cooperating. So I'm going to leave that for now, and I'm going to keep thinning this out. You don't need much of a coil for the bottom of this. Like, I don't want a thick coil like this. I want a nice thin foot on it. I wish I had one I could show you. I mean, I can show you the ones made. But see, it's starting to get too long for my board, so I'm going to put some of that aside and then work on this one. See, it's amazing how it comes together again just by dampening your board and rolling it. So there's no water there. So, and this is still too thick for me. So I'm going to split it in half again, and then maybe what I can do is use half and half for the bottom. I find rolling coils is really, like, I don't know, it's kind of enjoyable. I just have to make sure I don't over-roll it. I think kind of what you're looking for is just slightly thicker than the walls of your pot. So that's looking really good. So I'll put that aside. And then I'm going to roll this one out. And I'm going to take this other piece and actually I'm going to dampen it a bit, because I'm going to go back to this and use it for the handles. So I'm just going to cover that up in some plastic. Okay, so now let's get this one the same. I use kind of the heel of my hands, but my fingers are spread. I use both the heel and the fingers. I used to say that people used to tell people that you have to get your whole body in it. Like the worm. It actually helps. Look how nice that is. Okay, this looks like it's about the same thickness. Yeah, great. So put those there. Go back to my pot. Now, here's where the magic happens. So now I need to find my scratchy, also known as the serrated rib. This is the serrated rib. Also, if you're ever a student of mine, you know I also call it the scratchy, because what you're doing is you're scratching the surface of the pot and what you're attaching so that they create nice teeth and can attach together. So what I do is what I call the water and weight method. So the easiest way, like these are about the same dryness, but I know my clay and I know that it does not, it likes to give you a hard time in terms of, things staying together. So what I do is you can't see me because I'm doing it off screen, but I'm dampening it a bit, and then so that I'm getting a little bit of water. I don't use slip. A lot of people use slip, or they use what they call magic water, which has water, and somebody's going to correct me, but maybe I think it's sodium silicate. But basically what you're trying to do, I try to do, and what works for me is use the clay itself that you're attaching to create that slurry and those teeth. So you can see that I've done that. Now what I'm looking for when I go, so I gotta do also what I'm attaching. So you're not gonna see these so well, but I'm gonna scratch them as well. Try to get it all on one side. Because you want to create those teeth. And you don't want it to be too wet, because if it's too wet, it's not going to want to attach. So see, these are also, so what I'm looking for is sorry, that better? Yeah. What I'm looking for is for it to be tacky. So I don't know if you can see that, but my finger, it's sticky, but it's not wet. Whereas if I go here, that's also sticky. And there's a couple spots I see that aren't quite that sticky, so I'm just gonna wet them a little bit. People are like, it's the weight part that people don't like. And what I used to tell my students was, you know, get a few things lined up and ready to go, and then you can just go and attach them. So now I want to attach these coils. So I don't love the end, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, I have plenty. So I'm going to cut off the end of this one, and I'm going to start, see if I can do it this way on screen. I'm going to start, and I'm basically going to start pushing it using my fingers and pushing it into the spot. So you can see, I don't know if you can tell, but it's lengthening as I go. When I get to the corner, I'm going to make sure that forms a pretty good corner, and then I'm going to continue. So I'm pushing down and squeezing at the same time. It's almost creating a bit of a triangle shape, which is fine because I'm going to deal with that later. Wow, this did quite a bit. But it's still too short, so now I have to add that other piece, which is fine. So it's also ready. I'm gonna try to attach it as best as I can. I will go over that little join later, but then just continue. Oh, this one seems slightly thinner, so instead of, I'm gonna try pushing it and compressing it together, just so I'm kind of doing this kind of movement instead. I wish I could see who's on. For some reason, it's not showing me. Okay, now I'm at the end. I'm gonna pinch off the original first part, and I'm gonna put this one down. So there, your foot is basically on. So now I'm just gonna keep going. Hopefully I'm not gonna lose battery here. I'm gonna keep going along and pushing and squeezing this, because I really wanna make sure this foot is really well on and it does not crack. And it doesn't look like much, like it's a very small foot, but I'm telling you what's great about, well, there's a number of reasons why having a foot like this is great. First of all, it lifts the pot off the ground, so it has gives it a bit more, I don't know, oomph. But it also, because you have to wax part of the bottom so that it doesn't stick to the kiln, the foot makes the perfect thing that you can wax, and then you can even put glaze in the center here because it's high enough to allow for that. So the only thing that ends up not glazed on your pot is the foot, which is really nice. And if you've watched any of my videos where I've thrown pots or trim pots, you've known that. So this is, for example, this is a thrown bowl here, and you can see that's what I did. So I'm doing basically the same thing I would do on a thrown pot, except I'm building it hand built. So this part of the pot is glazed. The foot isn't. Well, this one, it's a bit up to this edge because I do a bit of a indent, but then it just sits, you know, when you have it on something flat, you get that little elevation. And so this will have the exact same thing. It's very important for a bowl, but also important for a really flat piece, because otherwise this would be pretty boring. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wet my fingers and then go in and kind of smooth this out. So I basically go around, and the reason I like the banding wheel is because I can turn and do this. Almost like throwing a foot on a pot. So the banding wheel allows you to do this. and smooth it out. I'm gonna go around with my finger. I keep moving up. I'll move back again. Go around with my finger. And I'm just smoothing this out. I mean, some people say that using these kind of forms are a bit of a cheat, and I mean, in some ways they are. You could make your own forms and stuff, but I think when you spend the extra time like this to finish the pot, it makes a huge difference. And, you know, I have no problem using these molds because I don't think that, you know, I think that I add a lot to it. So this is basically smooth. And I would keep working on this and just making sure it's really, really great. So the next thing I want to do is I have a small tool. Now why did I not get everything out before I started? Good question. So I have this little tool. It's actually has a trimming tool on one end and then this really smooth sort of shape here. So I use that and I go in and I compress in this line here. So it gives it a little detail, but also makes that join a little nicer. So it basically seals the joins. You can see that there. You can still see some of the scratching from the attaching. So I'll go along and I'll do that on the outside. And then I'll do it on the inside. Usually I leave my sponge out here. So you can see it's there, and then I'm gonna get my finger and just clean up that spot there. And some of this you can do later, but I find the more you clean up as you go, the easier it is for you. And now I'm gonna do the inside. So I usually do the outside first and then the inside. The inside will tend to push it out. So sometimes I have to go back out to the outside again and do it again. Oh my God, it's 10:30, almost 10:30. Eek. And then again, I'm gonna take my finger and smooth the line that was created inside. Let's see the outside. Outside's looking pretty good. I might just go in and smooth that a little bit with my finger. Okay. The only thing I'm going to wonder if I'm going to do, am I going to do on here? Probably. I like to reshape the forms as well. You can see it in this pot that I did. See, it's pressed in. So it creates a different shape, or more of a scallop shape. So I usually do on the bottom as well. See, there's the bottom of that one. So I think probably with this one, if I remember correctly, I'll do one on each. So now I'm going to do that little push in. Again, it's just that little extra detail that gives it that, you know, professional, good look, like well designed. You know, somebody's thought of this. I've thought about the fact that once it's flipped over, that it's going to have scallops on the other side. So sometimes you do have to clean up where you've squished it in. Because you've disrupted that seal a bit. Okay, so now the tricky part. Okay, I need another board. 1 second. Okay, so now I need to flip it over, but before I flip it over, I have to, like, while I did a great job with my coil, it's probably not even, and I can tell by looking at it, it's not perfectly even. So what I do is I use a board. This will help me flip it over, but will also help me level it. So if I'm being really, really picky, I will get out my level, and you have to assume that the table's also level, which is it? Actually pretty level. So when it's sitting on here, it looks level, but if I look at it at eye height, I can see that this top board is not touching the pot evenly, so I want basically all the surfaces of that foot to touch the board. So I'm just going to gently press it down while still trying to keep it level. So it's best to do this at eye height. So I'm flipping it around. It's no longer level. I know that I have to push this side down a bit. Actually, that's pretty good. And now I can see all the points are touching. And then all I do is go 1, 2, 3, flip it over. Take this top one off. Take this piece that I was using as the spacer. And now I'm going to gently pull the corners out a little bit so that I can get my mold out. Exciting! So there it is. So it is not done yet. So I don't love this corner because this was where the clay was a bit short. So I'm just gonna, I don't want to add a lot of moisture to this because I know my clay, like I said, and it doesn't like moisture being added after it starts to dry, but I do want to kind of smooth it out a bit. So totally loving this. So you may recall that I put those little divots on the inside, so now I have to do that on the outside. So how I do that is similar to how I do the bowls. I take a little bit damp fingers, and so I'm going to go in the middle. I don't know if you can see this. And I'm going to squeeze it between my fingers. Now this clay is really dry, so I really want to make sure that I'm really compressing that together. And then I'm going to point in and push it towards the inside. Really gently. And now I see that there's a little crack here. So I'm not going to push that too far. That's just about all I'll do. Not quite in the center. It's okay. But it's okay. Because once you put the decoration on it, nobody's going to notice that. So then I'll try to do this one. So again, squeezing. So I'm squeezing like this through my fingers. Maybe I'll show you this way. With my thumb and my forefinger. And then you'll see it's almost like as if you were doing a spout. And then I'm going to push that forward. Okay, this side. And I'm going to do all sides because, actually, am I going to do all sides? No. I'm not going to do all sides because I'm going to put the handles on these sides, or should I? This is where you kind of have to figure out. I can't remember what I normally do. Thinking. I think no. I think I'm just going to do the two sides. Yeah. Okay. So that's ready for now. So now the handles. So I'm going to find, here's that piece of clay that I had already prepped. And so I want to make a couple of handles, and so I also hand build these. So I'm going to take 2 pieces of that clay that are about the same length. And again, I'm going to wet here because I want to get these back to being happy because they've been in. And I want them to be sort of like thin at the end and thicker in the center. And I'm just going to gently roll them. Here's another one. Again, I'm going to pinch the ends a bit because I want the ends to be a bit thinner. And then I'm going to roll. Make sure they're approximately the same length. Not going to be longer. It's a pretty big dish. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give them a little throw to stretch them. Oh no, I got dry clay in it. That's okay. Dude. Okay, I don't like that. So it just gives it a bit of stretch and makes it kind of a little more rounded on the end. Oh, hi, Natalie. Hey, how are you? Are you in your studio? I miss you. Natalie and I used to be in the same studio before it closed. Now she has her own studio. So there's the second one. So you could use them like this, but I want to give them a little something, something. So, which one's longer? This one. So I take my wooden tool, not this morning, I miss you too. Oh. And then I'll take this and I'm going to press it down on half. I don't know if you'll be able to see that, because what I'm trying to go for is to give it a bit of like a leaf shape. So there you go. And then I'm going to bend it and then shape it like a bit of an ear. Ooh, this clay is dry. So you can see the clay is drying. So normally I don't do this, but I feel like I added a little bit of water and now I'm just compressing those cracks. I think they're not gonna crack through, but I want it to be a bit smoother. It's just because this clay is slightly tired. So I'm gonna do this, so maybe what I'll do is before I do that, this one, I'll dampen it a bit. Press down. There we go. Yeah, that helped a bit. So there are my 2 little ears. Okay, now I gotta go back to my pot. See, pottery takes a long time. People always wonder why pottery is expensive or expensive. I'm gonna put expensive in what one of my sex therapy coaches called scare quotes. Because usually when someone puts something in quotes, it's because they're scared of it or they don't like it or they don't believe in it. So I love that. That's my new thing, scare quotes. So similar to what we did with the foot, I need to scratch. I'm going to have to attach these 2 things together. So I need to use my little scratchy. And the little trick I do here is because this is such a small attachment, I don't want to just scratch and leave a big mess on my pot. So what I do is I wet these and do a pretty good scratching up of them. And then I'll place it in the middle where I think it's going to go. I'm not going to attach it, but I'm just going to gently press on it. So then it shows me, I don't know if you guys can see this, where, yeah, you probably can see those 2 little spots. That's where I have to scratch. And then I have to remember which handle I use. So usually I put it in front of the one that I'm going to use. So now I can just scratch that spot with a little bit of water so that it gets tacky. And then let's do the other one. Approximately center. Of course, there's a little dot there. That's okay. Okay. Scratch that spot. So this is only phase 1. Like, and I had already rolled out the clay, which is a whole other part of it. I still have to decorate this. I have to fire it, clean it up, glaze it. Actually, I have to let it dry first. Even after it dries, I still do some work on it. So now I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to put it in those two spots, and I'm going to press on both sides so I can compress it onto that clay. And sometimes what I like to do, and I'll probably do it in this case because the clay is quite dry, is I'll take my little tool and it'll create a little, oh, actually if I had those little dots, do I have dots? I don't know where my little belly button, oh, this is the roller I was looking for earlier. I don't know where my little belly button thing is. Oh, here it is. Haha. So my little belly button thing. Because this one has already little dots in them, I'm going to repeat that. And what this does is it adds that connecting element to it. I'll show you once I attach this one. I don't want it to fall. I want to attach it. What it does is it carries on that design into your handle so that it all goes together. Like, the idea is you want things to look like they belong, like that it was intentional. Everything you do should be intentional. Okay, so now I'll use this again to attach. Yeah, I like doing this with my clay. My clay is not always, so there's a bit of stuff that's squeezed out, so I'm going to use this paintbrush and just kind of clean up around. Still a few little cracky things I don't love, but it's going to be fine. And once it's glazed, you're not going to notice. And there you go. There's the finished dish. So I'll let that set up, and then I'm going to start decorating it. But for now, I have a couple pieces that I need to decorate, so I might as well do that while we're all here, because why not? Half an hour, can she do it? So here's that piece. So this is similar to the other one, but this one's a little more dry. It's not bone dry, but it's a bit firmer, like it's holding its shape. So then this has got quite a bit of decoration on it. And so I only want to add a little bit of the tattoo decals to it, just to give it a little extra something. But I quite like this spiral design, and you can see in this one as well, I put the little indents in. So I'm going to go grab my decals. So if I move this off to the side, I'm pretty happy with that. So I could decorate that right now, that other piece I just made right now, but it's a bit soft and I don't want to risk like deforming it. Oh, I just want to show you, I have these little dishes I made last week as well, which are super cute. I'm very excited about them. They're like for olives or something. I think I'm just going to keep these plain white. I used a mold I made out of a vintage Jello mold. I'll show you. We found these at a vintage shop, a whole set of them, and so some potter friends, we did a bit of a challenge where we had to do something with the mold. And so, like, the first thing I did was basically replicate it, but I made a mold so that it would make it easier because it's kind of hard to form around metal. And so I just made these little dishes, and I'm super happy. My friend, I just kind of threw it together for fun, and she really liked it. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll make more of them. She's like, oh yeah, that would be perfect for like just some olives, or she does like a lot of charcuterie dishes. So she was saying that she would love to use them for like when she has little jams and stuff like that. I mean, you can buy cheap ones at the store, but she has a lot of my work. And so she was saying she would love to just have little ones. So there you go. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm going to add the decals on. So these are obviously fired pieces and, you know, thrown bowls, but it's the same idea. Like I said, I don't want to add a ton to these. So I often like doing like a combination of shapes and then using the pieces that are like flowers and leaves to kind of accentuate. I don't know what I'm going to do for this one. I also have some great ones that have maybe like flowers and things on them that I can cut parts out of. Maybe that would actually, I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to cut, and because the two of them are quite similar, I'm going to, partly for ease, but also partly because it's kind of nice, and if somebody wants a set, then you have two that are similar but different that they can use. So yeah, that's cool. I kind of like that flower. And what else? Oh yeah, this is cool. Okay. I'm gonna cut this piece. Sometimes I like to play with the line, the implied line or the actual line that's already there in the pot. So in this case, there's already a line there from where the pattern is. So I'm going to use that. I'm gonna keep this piece for the other one because I don't want to add too much. Sometimes I go overboard. I don't know. I usually like them. Yeah. Although it's nice to add things in threes. So I'm rethinking, but maybe I don't know. No, I'm just gonna add those two. So there, I decide where I'm gonna place them. Sometimes I don't overthink this part too much. So you place them so that the colorant is facing down, and these are on rice paper, and I got these in China when I was there. So I still have tons of them, but I tend to run out of my favorite ones. So I guess I'll just have to go back to China, to that shop. I know when I bought these ones, the people there thought I was totally crazy, but I had already started working with them and really loved the process. And again, here's something that's commercially made, but I feel because I'm not just using them as is, I'm cutting them up and doing something with them, that's the way that you make things your own. And I think this work looks uniquely mine because nobody is using them that I'm aware of in quite the same way. So I call these my tattoo series because I cut and layer them things, similar to people who have lots of tattoos and use their body as a canvas. So that's kind of what I did. So you just get a bit of water. So some people do these on the pot once it's been fired one time. The reason I don't do that is because I did do it once, and while the decals come off much easier, like onto the pots, I found that I was getting some crawling, so where the glaze wasn't wanting to stick to those areas because the colorants were firing off, and so I think in the kiln, depending on how fast it's fired, it was pushing the glaze away from them. And also, I like to decorate when the pots are at this like leather hard cheese stage. So here's those two. As you can see, this is a little warped, this piece, probably because I've been picking it up. So I don't want to add too much water, but I know I'm going to have to go in and add a little bit more because it's not quite there. So then I'm going to get the other one. So I'll put this one aside. I'll grab the other one. So it's the same, but I want to make it a little different. So I cut this other piece, so I'm just going to put that on the pot. Sometimes I try to just not overthink this because when I overthink it, I feel like sometimes it just doesn't work out. So there's one piece, and now I want to add something else. Sure, what should I add? I'm going to add I kind of like the idea. So you have to always picture that it's going to be upside down. That is really similar to that. Maybe I won't use that piece. Although I like to use these remnant pieces. I'm just going to cut it out. What the heck? Sometimes you just have to go for it. Once I cut it out, I can lay it down and see if I like it. I don't need to decide right this second. Yeah, I'm just going to go with it. So if my clay was drier, I might want to dampen the surface a bit, but this clay has still got some moisture in it. This is why they don't adhere as easily as it would as if the clay was bone dry. I just don't like to deal with the clay when it's either bone dry or bisque. I just haven't had much success, and so I do it this way because it works for my clay. But if you're using something like this, you may find something different. So the trick with these decals is not to put too much water on all at once because it could smudge the design. So there's those two. So I'm going to go back to the first one. This one's also popping up. And I don't know if you can see, but there's areas that are darker than others. So I'm going to go in and just lay in a bit more water on those spots. And I'm kind of dabbing it. Like I said, I don't want the pattern to blur out. It sometimes does anyways, just depending on how dry the decals are. There's like all these things that factor in, I find. And I can see the other one. You can kind of see where it's attaching to the clay, because it'll be lighter in those spots and darker in the spots where it hasn't. So you just try to... Another trick is, which I didn't mention, when you put them on, it's best to brush from the inside out because you want to make sure you don't trap air in there as well. Because if you do, next time you add water, it's going to smudge that design as well. So you don't want that. And with these, I don't mind if some of the pattern doesn't transfer. That doesn't bother me a lot. And so since I've used red, then I'd want to use a bit of the black on it. So this is one of my favorite sheets. I have certain parts of it that I really love and I use the most of. And unfortunately, those are the ones that tend to get used the most. I know last time I went to the clay conference, somebody had some of these, so I did buy some replacements, but there's, you know, the ones that I got in China, like a lot of them you can't get anywhere else other than that place. So I'm pretty fortunate that I was able to get those. Boy, 11:15. I have to be home by noon. I have to go walk down the street and go grab my car at my friend's place, which I parked it there. Okay, so definitely not going to trim those bowls or add anything else. So this is quite a big piece. This is the part of the thing that I like a lot. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to cut part of it off. I'm going to use this part. See, this is the thing about these decals. Like, sure, you can just, you know, add them as is, but then they would look like everybody else's pots. So I try to use them in different ways. Oh yeah. Okay. How are these babies doing? So then I lift the corner. Yeah, that's pretty good. So I'm gently lifting. So you can see that some of that one piece did not transfer, but I don't have a problem with that. I think it looks pretty good. See? I'll take the other one off. You can use the end of a pin tool. Sometimes I just use my finger because it's easier. And there's the other one. Ooh, beautiful. Okay, now this one. I have some of these transfers that I really love that do not transfer well, and it's so sad because I love the pattern. But this one does. I can't remember how much I spent there. I know the people at the store really thought I was crazy, but I was so excited to get all of them, and I've used like so many of them. Okay, so there you go. So I could just leave these like this, but I do like to add a bit of black into it. So what shall I do? And I like to make a connection between the line of the pot, like any of the lines of the pot, or connect the red to the black because it's unexpected, or connect the texture. So in this case, I realized when I laid this down, the little swirl, I can attach it so it looks like it came from there. So I kind of like that. And so, actually, yeah, I'm going to attach this here. Again, laying in the water. Sometimes when you don't have a lot of time, it's the best thing because then you don't overthink it. But now I'm feeling under pressure. And I think I'm just going to put this little, let's see, that might not be the right thing. Sometimes when I look at these, I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. And then I was like, oh yeah, it's the wrong way when I turn it upside down. That's why it's good to kind of do two at a time, because then you kind of can see. Yeah, I'm going to put this one here. Yeah, so I meant to, this piece that I cut out, I meant to put in the other one, but okay, what else should we talk about? Enough about pottery. How's everyone doing? I'm doing good. Some of you may know that I am on a leave of absence from my work, so I can pursue my dream of being a coach, and it's been going great. Yeah, I'm really love talking to people and getting to know about people and helping them with things that may be troublesome or that they're struggling with in their life. I mean, I always say that I'm more of a relationship coach, but as with most things, once you start talking, if you're having issues in your relationship or with anything, it often comes down to other things in your life, things that you believe in, other dreams that maybe you're not pursuing. And so I love working on that stuff too. I've had a few clients so far, and it's been super amazing. I do a free call, so if there's something that you're needing some help with, and you just want to chat with someone, like no obligation, you can just give me a call. We can have a 1-hour chat, and that can be that, and I'll make sure you get great value of it. But if it's something we think that we agree that I could help you with, then we can talk about like coaching. So the offer's there. Just reach out, and yeah. Okay. I'm getting messages about my course that's in an hour, a little over an hour. Gots to get home. But I got to finish this. I always get to the studio and think I'm going to finish more than I really can. So I'm sorry I'm not showing you these, but I'm feeling the need to start moving a little quicker. But I'll show you what they're like. Yeah, I like to work on 2 pieces at once because, like I said, because you have to lay in the water and let it sit, and then you have to go back to it usually at least one more time. So there's the pattern for that one, and there's the pattern for this one. So I've used the same 2 types of decals, but use them in a different way. So while the pots are really similar, they're still different. And I think that's what I like the most about doing this kind of work. It's like they're a bit mixy-matchy. It's like those bowls that I showed that I made for somebody. I love the fact that they're all a little different. There's things that connect them, but they're still kind of their own unique beings. And that's the beauty of handmade. You can do that. You can't buy that in a store, like manufactured. Not really. And that's why, you know, handmade pottery may cost more than inexpensive commercial stuff. In fact, sometimes it's the same price, which kind of blows my mind. Like people buy, what's that brand? It's also the D, not Danby. Maybe it's Danby. Anyways, they're made to look like handmade pottery, but they're not. And they're just as expensive as, you know, as it might be to buy something from, or more, from a potter that makes it each piece by hand. So kind of blows my mind, but anyways, support your local potter. Doesn't have to be me, but there's some beautiful makers out there that make such great work, and you know, I